Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you're dialing in from. Thank you so much for joining us today for our latest episode of Ecomm Engine. Today, we're talking about driving repeat purchase. And in particular, we're unpicking the world of subscription. And when I look at subscription, I don't think I could find three better providers than those who've got with us today. And if I look at what Skio are going to be talking about in terms of the subscription engine in the first place, you then go into Rohan and Anton and what they'll be talking about from BubbleHouse in terms of loyalty and making sure subscribers don't churn after their first or second subscription. And then you've got Harry really adding fuel to the fire and growing subscriptions with the team at Relo. And so without further ado, let's start with some intros. And Nick, I'll come to you. Perhaps you could just tell us a little bit more about you, your role, and the world of Skio.
Sure. My name is Nick. I'm Skio. That sees me work really closely with both our agency partners and our tech partners, like the other folks in the room here today. Been doing this for about a year. Prior to this, I was actually on the agency side. Did that for Yonk, you know what it feels like anyway. Got my real first taste of Ecomm, loved it, and been doing it ever since.
Perfect, thank you. And Rohan and Anton. Rohan, I'll come to you first. Just a little bit about your role and the world of BubbleHouse.
Yeah, sure. I'm a co-founder here at BubbleHouse. We've been doing this for a couple of years now. Serve hundreds of brands, and subscription is a huge area of growth for us. So very excited to talk about what's going on there. I think there's a lot of exciting things. A lot of people leaning into a lot of innovation. I mean, you see that with Skio and Relo as well, and of course with what we're doing. So we're excited to talk about that. I'm sure Anton can chime in, but I think it's a very exciting topic. So. I'm excited to talk about it today.
I just thought actually when whoever goes second out of you two each time is going to have an absolute graveyard shift because you'll be trying to add to whatever the other person says. So, Anton, what have you got in terms of BubbleHouse? Any more insight to give before we go over to Harry?
At this stage, probably not. But hi, I'm Anton, part of the business development team at BubbleHouse. Been here for a couple of years. Excited to share more about what we do and how we can develop subscriptions.
What I'll try and do, Anton, is I'll make sure I don't just keep going to Rohan first and then you just have to fill in the blanks. I'll give you a chance to go first sometimes.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Harry finishes off with intros in terms of Relo. I mean, most people, I think, will know of Relo. Certainly like to think so, but perhaps share a little bit more.
Yep, for sure. So I'm Harry. I'm the Partnerships Director here at Relo. We're a repeat revenue platform. So we help brands to increase their repeat purchase rate, to increase their cross-sell rate, and also help grow their subscriptions. We work with a ton of the Skio brands, powering many of the biggest subscription brands in the world now. Very happy to be here.
Very cool. I absolutely love what we've created in terms of this like flywheel, if you like. Like I say, you've got Skio, you've got BubbleHouse, and then you've got Relo, and you build this perpetual movement. And I think that's really exciting for brands listening today. Bit of housekeeping. For anyone listening today, if you've got any questions, there is an opportunity to ask as we go. I will try my best to get through as many as possible. We have had some questions coming beforehand as well, so we will start with those. But anyone got a question, let me know, and I'll do my best to get round to all of you. I imagine this to take between 30 to 40 minutes. We'll go through as much as we can. And if anyone would like to follow up with each of the guys on the call afterwards, then please do so. So without further ado, Nick, I think we're going to start with you. And a question I've been asked more recently actually is that memberships, subscriptions, everyone's looking to possibly go into this world, but I guess the question is subscription right for everybody? And if it's not, how do you know if your product is right for subscription?
Yeah, so on the subscription side, I think memberships, it gets a little bit interesting because a number of different products could lend well to memberships. You could think of Costco. Every product under the sun has a membership element to it. But specifically to subscriptions, I think the key word to think about is replenishable. So any product that you consume, so think about food, beverage, pet products, supplements are really big. Cleaning products, surprisingly, are really big as well. Things that you can consume or you replenish on a regular basis, on a regular cadence and frequency, they all lend well to subscription. Essentially, remember, you think you're putting down your credit card at the checkout, and then you're choosing to opt in to a set frequency of when that product is going to show up at your house. I think people get really excited by this idea of recurring revenue, being able to escape the idea of not having to pay for each customer to come into the door. So they, get excited about applying that to their business. But businesses where they don't have that same kind of structure that I just outlined, sometimes it can be a poor fit, a bit of a mismatch. So folks in the apparel space, for instance, you could perhaps make a membership program work where you're paying a membership fee, whether annually or monthly, and then you get discounts or special perks across the brand. But having set pants or shirts and things like that show up at your house every month could actually just like create a huge headache in terms of returns and that type of thing. It's not that consistent. I get my dog food, my cat litter delivered to my house every single month because my pet consumes it at a set frequency. So really look for products that kind of fit that mold, and then they lend perfect to subscription.
Thank you. And Harry, I just want to come to you on when we started working together with Relo, one of the things that really struck me is the cadence of subscriptions. And actually sometimes you get products that absolutely are suited to monthly kind of like monthly cadence. But then sometimes, I don't know, like a shaving foam or something like that, where sometimes, as you see here today with this bit, like I may not use it all in the month. And therefore, if I get a second one or a third one, suddenly I'm thinking, well, I've got far too much. And rather than changing the cadence, I'd probably just cancel. In terms of the brands that you've worked with, how do you think, I mean, is monthly always right? Or actually, have you found that actually fortnightly is working better? Or is it purely sector to sector is going to have a totally different cadence?
Sector to sector, brand to brand, it's absolutely going to change. We normally suggest having 3 to 4 different options. Maybe that's a monthly, a bi-monthly, you might even have a bi-weekly. But the really important thing is understanding the cohorts of customers in your repeat purchase segments, seeing the regular cadences at which they are repurchasing, and then working out what appropriate subscriptions would be for them. We have an integration which will automatically detect that in Relo, so you can start to see all those repeat purchases. You can start to see how often they're repurchasing, and it means that you can very contextually match them onto the right subscription, which, as you mentioned, therefore means that they are less likely to cancel in the future, because you don't end up with that ultimate subscription nightmare of the customer stockpiles the product and then they naturally have this churn moment where they come to potentially cancel.
Just building a little bit on that, I mean, when Nick was talking there about replenishable products, what I'd like to know from you, and I'm sure there's lots of people listening, whether it be live or looking back and going, actually, we've got a challenge here around replenishment, and actually, I don't know how to overcome it. So I'd be keen to see from your side, what are the common challenges that you're seeing with brands when it comes to driving replenishment, whether it be from email or SMS? What I kind of want to know is not only what are the challenges you see, but how can we solve them?
Well, the first thing to note is that there will just be wildly different replenishment timings between each customer. Let's imagine a scenario of a coffee brand, for example. You may have 2 different product sizes, a 500 gram pack versus a 1 kilogram pack. And you may have a customer who's drinking coffee 3 times a day versus one who drinks it once every couple of days. So just amongst 2 customers and 2 products there, you've got some dramatically different reorder timeframes. Multiply that out across several thousand customers per month, and you've just got this massive variation in terms of when each customer is most due to reorder. So what Relo will do is we analyze all the historic Shopify data, and we start to look within that data basically for customer level trends, product level trends, and we start to come up with predictions about when we think each customer is most likely to reorder based on a historic analysis of every single order that's ever happened on that store. And that means we basically end up with a running tally of when we think each upcoming replenishment opportunity is. And a lot of analytics platforms will be able to achieve something relatively similar to that. But I think the secret sauce that we have at Relo is that then integrates directly into Klaviyo. So most subscription brands will have a replenishment flow, which just reminds people to reorder after 45 days, for example, regardless of what they've ordered. When you integrate Relo into that specific Klaviyo flow through our trigger, what it means is that then starts firing at a dynamic time frame depending on which customer's coming through it. So it might be 30 days for one customer or 46 days for another customer, all just optimized to all of that data. So it can kind of do the heavy lifting of having 20 different segment flows within Klaviyo, but just in one centralized place. So it's way easier to manage and updating in real time with the data as well.
That's super smart. Anton, I'm going to come to you. I guess that I'm curious with BubbleHouse, right? Most brands I talk to, we're talking about a loyalty solution, but it's all for one-time purchases. And what I'd be curious to know from you guys is, What are the differences that you see when you're trying to build a loyalty solution for subscription brands versus one-time purchase brands?
Yeah, happy to answer that. It's actually a question that comes up a lot when we speak to customers, and they aren't really sure as to what they might not be doing right, because they might already have a loyalty program, but it's not really aiding their subscription side in any way. And I think the main area that we've seen across the clients that we've serviced and the experience that we have is that really the goal with subscription loyalty is to have customers have the peace of mind that they don't have to think about their subscription. It can just keep happening in the background. So when you create a loyalty program around subscriptions, your goal is to have this continuous, have these continuous benefits that keep coming to your customers without you having to necessarily do something actively. It runs more in the background. You need to have the peace of mind that when you have your next order, right, you have the next cycle comes along and a new subscription item arrives at your door, there's also some sort of a benefit that you automatically get. So those integrations with companies like Skio, for example, become really important to make sure that everything is seamlessly fulfilled. And that piece of the puzzle works well, as opposed to having to make your customer actively come back to your site, actively do certain actions to keep their loyalty going. Because really the goal with subscriptions is when you find that product that you need on a monthly basis, you just keep getting that, and then you're incentivized in the background to keep staying on and make that LTV grow. Rohan, anything to add on your side?
No, that sounds good. And I think it's especially important now since, I think we're just on a macro scale in a very competitive, much more competitive environment now than ever before. People are, you go into any category of products, you probably have competitors, just at your neck, right? And it's very important. And on top of that, Google ads, Facebook ads are at an all-time high in terms of how expensive it is in order to acquire a customer. So when you layer on the competition plus how expensive it is to acquire a customer, it means that when you do acquire one, you need to keep them because they're extremely valuable and you've spent a lot of money to acquire one. And so especially when it comes to loyalty, the reason loyalty is that important is because when you acquire one, you need to do everything that you can to keep them. And, all the things that Anton mentioned, are the things that are involved. So we can talk, I'm sure we'll get into the specifics of, what kinds of incentives you can offer, but it's just on a macro scale, we're in a much more competitive environment than ever before. And you need to make sure that, that your people stay and they're not churning.
Right, and let's just build on that. I'm going to come back to you on this, which is really whenever I talk to brands around loyalty, the concern is that. So I was doing an Ecom Engine episode with Conjura, and I did another one with Store Hero, and we talked about contribution margin and profitability for brands, and that's something that right now brands are more and more conscious of than ever. And so I guess there's maybe a misconception that to incentivize loyalty, it's always to reduce price point. And I guess that's something I'd be keen to see from your side is like, if we're trying to build loyalty with a brand, what else can we do, or a brand with a customer, what else can we do other than giving 5% off, 10% off, etc., and just chunking away at any minimal margin that we have got?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. So I think there are a lot of different things when it comes to loyalty. I think just like people like it, I'm not going to discount the fact that no pun intended, that discounts matter, right? Because discounts do matter.
The questions.
But the other stuff does matter too. So when it comes to incentives, we can talk about what those look like. Obviously, points is one representation of a discount. So letting people earn points, that often forms the core foundation of how things work. That's okay. And the way to think about it is not that so like you mentioned, people often have this misconception that, I'm giving away points, so I'm giving away 5% of my original 100% that I would have gotten otherwise. And that's not correct, because you need to think that some people would have churned and not given you an extra 100% unless you had provided that 5% additional benefit. So you're getting an additional 100% by them making another order, an additional 100% by making them another order, as opposed to essentially thinking that your first order and you're giving away 5% and that's all that's going to happen. So they need to think more long-term in terms of making sure people stay on and get more used to, essentially creating this habit of staying on, and earning the benefits associated with being subscribed to your product, as opposed to just thinking that on a short-term basis, I'm giving away 5% of my margin and that's going to be an issue, for me profitability wise. So I think that's extremely important. You think airlines, right? it's not that airlines don't think in terms of, or as a customer, right? You don't think in terms of, oh, like, I'm going to stick on a United or Delta, and Delta and United is not thinking that, oh, I'm losing 5% of my margin or 10% of my margin because I'm keeping you there. No, they're thinking like they want to create a lifelong customer out of you, and you're going to be traveling for the next 5 years or 10 years or however long, and they need to make sure that you stay. So it's not about the short term; it's really about the long term, and brands need to start thinking this way too. Otherwise, it's not going to, it just won't bode well if they're that short term minded. In terms of the types of incentives, lots of things that brands can do. Right. I mean, we've all heard about surprise and delight. Skio does a lot on that front too. We do a lot on that front too. That's extremely important. So things like offering points, things like offering free product is extremely powerful as well, especially when it comes to the first few months when retention is the most volatile. So we always recommend that people do that. First few months, people churn the most. You want to make sure that you're offering your best incentives. And then there are lots of engagement related, activities that people can complete too. And there's a lot of flexibility here, from doing type forms and educational materials, giving them rewards around that, all the way to, following on socials and whatnot. So we can get into, some other ones, but on a macro scale, like I said, I think that the core point here is to think more long-term as opposed to short-term, because you're adding 500% by keeping loyalty as opposed to losing 5%.
I really appreciate that. And look, when we had this idea around bringing all you gents on here, and I think, look, we probably could have had a bit more gender diversity, but at the same time, like, we've got some amazing brains on this call. And one thing I was really keen to do is I love the fact that everyone plays their part in the puzzle, but actually combined, like, there's an immense amount of value on this call. And so coming to you, Nick, let's say that brand that's listening is already made their mind up, subscriptions for them. What I want to know is now, how do we optimize, right? We've gone over the hurdle of, is it right for me? We've decided it is. Now, what are the 2 or 3 things we need to do to make sure that that subscription program is running as slick as it possibly can be?
Sure. I often think of this in terms of, different levers in your business. So for your subscription, how do you grow it? I think there's really comes down to like 3 different ways. So number 1, add more subscribers into the bucket. So focus on the acquisition piece. Number 2 would be, how do you grow the value of those subscribers? So increasing the average revenue per subscriber. And then the last one is just increasing the LTV, extending the LTV. So keeping those subscribers on longer. So there's, 3 different approaches that you can take to growing the value of your subscription. I typically focus or advise merchants to focus on the final piece first, before addressing the first and the second. The first one, of course, is like the sexiest one. That's where all the glory is, driving more customers into the subscription. But if you're able to keep every single subscriber on longer, then that's probably the best place to focus your attention first, to make those acquisition efforts down the road that much more valuable, given that you now have a system that keeps people around longer. And there I tend to look at email and then look at loyalty as kind of like the next things to kind of like do hand in hand. If you're able to set your customers up for success with even just like a really strong subscription welcome flow, often folks will have like a post-purchase email flow, but they don't have a separate, distinct post-subscription email flow designed around really, onboarding the customer into the brand and building the habit around the product, and really coaching them on how to get the most value out of the product, and maybe even showing like UGC around other customers like them that have seen, maybe if it's on the supplement side, specific results, or if the food side, it's like, how they built it into their lifestyle. Like those types of things on the front end really matter when it comes to, the second purchase or the third cycle arriving, and has it already incorporated into that person's life, or have they accumulated, 3 boxes in their pantry, right? The difference between one and the other can be massive in terms of what it means for dollars for the merchant, and creating a really positive experience for the subscriber.
Just a question on that, Nick. I see you reference dollars, and I appreciate US based, so naturally going to be thinking in dollars rather than pounds or euros, etc. But are there any nuances? And I appreciate I'm going super off tact here, and you've had no prep for this whatsoever. But are there any nuances to subscription programs on an international level? For example, we see that US students, behave like this with the subscription program versus merchants in Europe behave like this and merchants in the Middle East or Asia behave like this?
Yeah, I think there's for sure like discrepancies in like the behavior around different customer segments by geography. That said, there's massive subscription programs in the UK, sometimes around types of products that you wouldn't suspect, cat food, cleaning products. So like subscriptions are alive and well across the pond for sure. They just might not be attached to the same products that in the same way that the industry might have matured a little bit differently on this side of the Atlantic. But yeah, absolutely. Different behaviors in different geographies.
Okay, thank you. And Harry, I'm going to come to you. One of the things that stuck out to me, and I wrote it down here when Nick was chatting, was just around that improving the average order value per subscription. And actually, that's something that I've seen Relo seemingly do quite well with email and SMS. But I guess that also is a challenge to a lot of brands, is the cross-sells and upsells within the subscription program. Just tell us a bit about the challenges that brands are facing and how you think they can solve those problems to increase that AOV of per subscription.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so there's a couple of sides to it. Firstly, there's that earlier stage in the funnel where you're just looking at one-time purchase customers, i.e. non-subscription customers. There, it's very hard just to work out the cross-sell combinations within the data of products that people like to buy together. And usually for brands, if they want to get into that, they have to export the entire historic Shopify log of all the orders, and they have to use data analysis to break it all down, and then getting that back into Klaviyo is really challenging. So there are ways to automate that. One of the ways we do that is an automated Relo flow that powers suggested cross-sells on the exact day that they're most likely to want to try that based on historic trends. But then also, as you mentioned, for the subscription customers, there is also a cross-sell opportunity. So for that cohort of customers who are already on a subscription, we also have some predictive analytics that can work out if you're on that particular subscription and you've bought X products in the past, how can we present particular one-time cross-sells to you? So there's that side, but then also when people are managing their subscription, there's a chance there for adding a one-time product in there as well. And anytime that, of course, you can get these recurring subscription customers to try something new, the opportunity of taking out a concurrent subscription is not only big for the average order value, but that multiplies a little bit, to your point, Rohan, across maybe 5 or 10 orders across the lifetime of the customer. So it can be hugely impactful, especially if it's done quite early in that subscription journey.
Folks, just breaking up the session slightly, what I'd like to know from each of you, and I'd call it a quick fire round to stay on brand. Name me a brand that you think gets subscriptions spot on. Are there any brands that you know that you think, you know what, I think they get them spot on? And Anton, I'm sorry to throw you under the bus as the first person, but I'd love to know from your side, are there any brands that you look out there in the kind of subscription space and you go, yeah, if you're going to model your program on someone or take some inspiration, it would be that brand there? For a heads up, I'm going to come from you to Harry, to Nick, to Rohan, just so you've got time to prep a thought.
Yeah, funnily enough, as you were asking that question, one brand immediately came to mind. It's not a brand that we work with or anything, any way we're related to, but Huel, the brand that focuses on the drinkable meals, they do subscriptions really well. They've gamified this idea of getting the different tumblers and the different like the portable cups that you drink Huel in to a crazy level, which is what I think brands should aspire to do. I've heard from a lot of members and a lot of people that have modeled other programs around what Huel has done, that they've had great success at making customers want to reach those different tiers with the different colored bottles and kind of stay subscribed for long enough so that other people who drink Huel know that they've managed to stay on for that long, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's what it's all about, kind of adding an extra layer when it comes to the purchase behavior that customers have. So it's not just something that you buy just to consume, but also there's some deeper meaning to it, whether it's a community or a gamified approach. And I think Huel has done a great job when it comes to that.
We talked there a little bit around collectibles, and Harry, I promise I'll come to you next, but I'm just curious, in terms of collectibles, at one stage it looked like NFTs were going to be possibly the answer, and people were going to be able to collect NFTs, and that was going to be the future, et cetera, et cetera. That seems to have, unless I'm massively off the point, seems to have died a bit of a death. Like, do you think that collectibles are the way going forwards? And if not NFTs, then how else might we do it?
I think it's less about necessarily the collectibles, more about the community that you form. So having, different either social opportunities within your brand or ways that you tie the community together, which might be through the collectibles, is what really allows you to push through additional objectives that customers might have, apart from just purchasing for the sake of consumption. Rohan, any insight that you might have into this particular topic?
No, I think you're right. I think it's community. I think that's extremely important when it comes to uniting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're very fortunate to have just won a brand that I will share tomorrow on socials. But in terms of that cosmetic space and the community they've built, I see the collectibles as being a potential gateway into the community and access to certain events or whatever. I think that's really exciting. Harry, going back on topic, in terms of a brand that you think does subscription well, who would you put forward? And thank you, Anton, for that.
Well, one that you actually put us in touch with originally, Nathan, your friends Fourth Glade. I think.
Yes, I love it.
Go. Yeah, and I think they've done a really, really good job of they use the Relo integration, but they've also just maxed out what you can do with Klaviyo as a subscription brand, basically. So they're a really good one to look at. And we actually have a case study that we've published with them, which we can maybe share in the comments or something. But because pet food to me is an area which has all of the key markings of a really good subscription business, but also the challenges that come with it. So people who have pets, of course, have dramatically different subscription needs and timeframes. You might have a really big dog versus someone else with a really small dog. The amount of food that can be being consumed by those are probably 10 to 20x in terms of differences sometimes. They've used our integration particularly well to make sure that they're nailing all those timings and moving customers across onto the right subscription. But it's also just meant that they've been able to launch a ton of different subscriptions to target all sorts of different animals, which I just think is particularly well finessed. So they're the one that I usually point to.
Very good. Thank you. And Nick, who's your brand shout out?
Yeah, I will shout out Everyday Dose. They might be actually a BubbleHouse customer as well.
I was going to say Everyday Dose too.
Yeah.
So you can talk about your bit. I'll talk about the loyalty because they're killer.
Sure. What I really appreciate that they do on the front end, Rohan, I'll let you speak to what they're doing on the loyalty side. But what they're doing on the front end, they offer a starter kit. And I'm going to talk about this in a moment, but it's this really idea of making your subscription offer like a really easy decision by just packing it with tons of value. So in their case, rather than attaching, some kind of throwaway merch to make the deal more attractive or eroding margin by reducing the price point, extremely on the front offer, they just pack it with a bunch of additional products that kind of bring you into the everyday dose lifestyle. So what do I mean by that? The product is a coffee alternative. It's like a mushroom coffee. So it's like a powder that shows up in a bag. But to really, mix the bag into your hot water, they include a frother in your first order. And they include a spoon in your first order. And they include like a booklet that tells you all about all of the benefits of these mushrooms and adaptogens and things like that. So they're really trying to educate you, onboard you into the lifestyle, but make sure that you have the tools around your home so that next time you go to make your beverage first thing in the morning, you have your frother ready. So you're not drinking essentially like mud water. They just do a fantastic job of that, really packing the value in the first order. And then subsequent orders, you're just getting kind of the core product.
Love that. Rohan, I'll come to you to share a bit about Everyday Dose, but don't think that this gets you out of naming another brand as well. You've got to do 1.5 brands.
Yeah. Everyday Dose is absolutely killing it. I think that they're doing something really unique. I mean, Nick talked about the frothers and all. I think what we help with is visualization of that as well. So it's not just the first month that you get, you do get the fancy frother and the spoon on the first month, but you get a lot of different things down the line as well. And making sure that people know about that and visualize that and see that, all those different rewards along the way. That's part of what we do. So visualization, I think, is a key topic here in terms of what we help brands do, because yes, there's benefit sometimes to surprising them, but there's also benefit to, letting them know sometimes what benefits they're going to get at month 4 and what benefits they're going to get at month 6 and so on. So we help everyday does essentially on that front. They do a lot when it comes to educational materials, and we help them tie that into loyalty as well by rewarding people with points and things like that they can then unlock towards future rewards through Skio. Actually, I can talk about that in a second. But educational materials, like Nick mentioned, right? So like they have this masterclass that you can take every month, and that they release on a monthly basis that you can take. And once you graduate from it, then you unlock, a new badge associated with it. So we help power things like that, really tying them into the community. And then, just communication is very key for them too. So they have a very unique way of communicating, their brand, and they do it extremely well too. So, I mean, you guys should subscribe I would definitely recommend subscribing just to learn from them, because like they're absolute legends at everything that they do. And I think it's a true example of subscriptions done well through communication, loyalty, everything that they do when it comes to Skio, as well, and just across the board, a very robust offering, and the results, show it too.
Thank you. And any other brands you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I think Let Me Live is a good one too. This is Kourtney Kardashian's brand. They do like all sorts of supplements as well. The thing I appreciate about them very much is just very clean and simple design, as well as, nothing too fancy, but doing everything extremely well and communicating it well according to the brand. So they have a section on engagement, right? So when it comes to, social related following and rewarding for points and things like that, being able to apply your points that you earn on subscriptions directly as well. So as opposed to just having to do one-time purchases, you can apply those towards subscription, so that you feel like your subscription orders are very valuable as well towards future ones. And then things around vendables too. So this is essentially when you can use points to then unlock new rewards too. So just the design is very clean, very beautiful. Communication is excellent too. They pay a lot of attention to making sure to that Klaviyo connection, right, that we're all talking about. And making sure everything's communicated well. I think communication is really something to highlight on this call. If you guys, if you guys are at a brand, and I'm talking about the audience, and you guys are not communicating well, really that's one huge lever you guys can pull. And it's not about necessarily adding on all sorts of fancy tech if you're not getting the communication right, in the first place. Once you have your Klaviyo down, then it's time to look at, us or anyone else. But we always recommend that if you don't have your Klaviyo down, focus on that, then come to us and we'll help you amplify afterwards. So definitely focus on communication.
Just on that, I'm really interesting that the Klaviyo seems a default solution, right? It's like, get your Klaviyo, not your email service provider down, like get your Klaviyo down. They've just kind of got to that position a bit like Hoover, I guess, where it's just like, oh, it's not, do you need email? It's like, do you need Klaviyo? Which I find just remarkable, and credit to those guys. Look, I said we'd take about half an hour, but if it's okay with everyone, I'd like to go just another 10 minutes, because I think it's been immensely valuable, and I think there's so much more that we can share. And so, Nick, I'm going to come back to you. And what I want to know in this kind of round, if you like, is just maximum value kind of golden nuggets to take away to people listening. So let's say we're not now convincing people subs are right for them. They're not now starting with subs. They're veteran subscription brands. And now we're looking to get that extra 5%. So for me, what's the easiest way to increase my subscription opt-in rate? And that's a big problem for brands when we've got one-time purchases, we've got subs. Let's say subs make up 55% of our revenue. So we're well on the right way. But how can we just get another uplift and sweat it just a little bit harder to get more of an opt-in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here, I think the key is to think about what is your subscription offer. And I feel like sometimes this is like an afterthought for some merchants, where they almost just default to the subscribe and save 10%, subscribe and save 15%, something like that. And then kind of call it a day and move on to the next task on their list. But I think there's really a lot more that you can do there, just interrogate that a little bit more. What are some different things that I can do to make that subscription offer more attractive and almost like should be the default decision in their minds? And touched on some of these elements already, but that's doing things like gift with purchase on the initial order, building out those starter kits. What are the complementary products that I can attach to my subscription offer that you wouldn't get otherwise if you just chose the one-time purchase. We talked about the loyalty side, about like, once you're post-purchase, building out an experience where you're rewarded with, whether it's additional gifts, perks, discounts, the further you stay on board. But I think there's value in taking what that program is and trying to bring it up front and just displaying it directly on the PDP, right? So that when they land on that product page, they're not just choosing between the one-time purchase and the subscription offer, but when they see the subscription offer, they also get an eye into kind of like the future of all of those benefits that they're going to get, right? So just make that second radial button that much more attractive by having kind of those benefits laid out, whether in a kind of an accordion directly on the PDP or something like that. But I think there's value in, maybe removing some of the surprise from the surprise and delight and just showing outright, hey, this is what you stand to benefit by subscribing today. And just kind of making that really clear to make that offer that much more attractive.
Love that. Thank you. Harry, I mean, we talked about Klaviyo just a minute ago, and I know you guys have a deep integration with those guys. But some of the best ways to grow your subscription via Klaviyo flows, I guess I'd love to know just a couple of tips. Like I say, we're with mature subscription brands now that are kind of getting all right, but possibly enriching those Klaviyo flows or just getting that extra marginal gain might come from going a bit deeper with an ESP. Perhaps you could just share a couple of tips around that.
Yeah, definitely. So the subscription converter flow, which I mentioned, which is one of our proprietary flows at Relo, will obviously help identify subscription opportunities and then send them an email at the right time when they've been purchasing, let's say, every month for the last 4 months. That's the perfect person to move on to not only any subscription, but actually a monthly subscription. So with the right dynamic content there, you can very contextually hit people up at the right time with the right subscription offer. But then what we found from speaking with a lot of brands is most of their subscription growth within their Klaviyo, they attribute to their campaigns. And what most brands will do is they just send out large list educational campaigns telling people that there's a subscription maybe once a month, and it tends to just get a trickle of new subscription customers coming in. At Relo, we've designed a tool called the Omni Block, which is a dynamic content block, which can actually be added into any email. And what it will do is contextually show the most relevant next action for the customer to take, just based on our analysis of where they are in the customer journey. So if they're not actually a good subscription opportunity at this particular time, maybe they've just ordered once, it doesn't necessarily make sense to try and push them onto a subscription very early. So in that scenario, we can identify that and have a block which tells people, hey, is it time to top up what you ordered last time? Hey, have you considered this particular cross-sell? And then once we start to realize that they're an open subscription opportunity, that's when that dynamic block can automatically just display a really contextual subscription offer for them. So that's kind of around raising awareness. But then when people click on that call to action, the next steps from Klaviyo are really important. If they go back without much context onto a product page, sometimes they can get lost and distracted by a lot of other things. So what we suggest is having a preloaded checkout. We call ours the magic cart. And what it means is people can either repurchase or become a new subscriber within just 3 clicks of receiving that email. So if someone's on the move and just on their phone, for example, it just takes away all of that friction, which is normally around the product page when you actually already know quite a lot of information about them if they're at the perfect moment to convert onto a subscription. So you may as well preload that experience and personalize it as much as possible.
So the Omni Block and the Magic Cart. I love those 2 terms. Thank you.
That's it.
Rohan, coming to you next in terms of, like I say, this is for mature subscription brands now. I want to know from you guys, both yourself and Anton, those brands you've got that are really at the top tier and like maybe the top 1%, what are they doing so well with loyalty that the rest aren't doing? And how can the brands listening become part of that 1%?
Anton?
Fight it out between you. Who's going first?
I can go first. Communication, number one. So there's this misconception that brands often have that people just land on the loyalty page and do things. I think this is a good example. That'll represent a broader problem that, in terms of brand thinking or a misconception that people often have. People don't just land on the loyalty page. It's probably like 10% of the people who actually just go on the site and then go to the page and then discover rewards that way. It's all about making sure you communicate it through Klaviyo. Otherwise, you can expect them not to see it. So you have to essentially make sure that your program is mapped out on Klaviyo, that you're setting that welcome to loyalty series on Klaviyo, right? And mapping out where your journey is over there. You're mapping out what reward you're going to get next, or what tier you're going to unlock if you stay one more cycle on your subscription, or what benefit, once that tier is unlocked, what benefits you now have access to get them back onto the site. Don't expect them to go on the rewards page and figure it out themselves. It's not going to happen. Only your maybe like 5% of the people who otherwise would are going to do that. Most people are passive, and are sitting at their computers. They get the email, they see it, and that's what reminds them of your brand. And then essentially at that point, that's how you want to lead them back. So, I think people have this misconception that, oh yeah, I just have to put on the nav bar and that's fine. That's not the case. That's why Klaviyo is so important. And I think it is household because it's just done such a great job of everything that e-commerce specifically needs. Not to say that there aren't others. I mean, ultimately, Klaviyo is just the majority. It's just, there are others too. I think they're just, playing catch up to Klaviyo at this point. In terms of how good they are, but the brands that do well always communicate very well. So I call that out as something to focus on.
Nice, thank you. Anton, anything to add?
Yeah, the other thing I'd add on is kind of helping back to what Nick said as well. It's that communication in different places across your site. So being able to tell your customers what types of rewards they stand to earn at different parts of the customer journey, and also giving customers the ability to redeem those rewards in different areas as well, be that the cart level or the checkout level. That's what really sets our best programs, regardless whether it's actually subscriptions or not, apart from the rest of the brands. It's having the loyalty experience be super ingrained into everything that the brand is doing across different pages on the site. So I think in addition to communication on the email front, it's also capturing the customer once they do make it to your website in different areas, and not expecting them, as Rohan said, to go onto the loyalty page and figure it out.
That's awesome. Thank you. Guys, finishing off today's session, what I want to know from you is, I've tried to avoid like pitching and telling everyone about your solution, but at the same time, if someone is interested, I'd love them to know where to go. So in your maybe closing remarks, what I'd like to know from each of you is, very briefly, what is the future of subscriptions? Maybe one or two sentences on what the future of subscriptions you think is. But also, if they want to find out more about your solution or you as a person, where do they go to find out more? And last time I picked on Anton, so this time I'll pick on Rohan, and I'll go across the top. So Rohan, Nick, Harry, and then Anton. Rohan, for you, what is the future of subs? And then going forward from that, where can people find out more about you personally? And maybe then about BubbleHouse. And of course, BubbleHouse will get a double plug. So lucky you. Rohan, over to you.
Yeah, thanks. I think the future of subs is, one big part of it is making sure that you do everything that you can the customer. I always like to harken back to this point because I think it's so important these days. So, everyone's faced with high ads costs, and everyone's faced with, 5 other competitors in their space who are eating away and, buying their own search domains on Google and buying, Google ad space for people who talk about the competitors and whatnot. Right? I mean, it's very cutthroat these days. So you need to make sure that if you do acquire someone and they have the pleasure of experiencing your product, that you keep them. And I think loyalty is a huge part of that. So that's where we come in, and everyone's loyalty looks a little different because everyone's customer looks a little different too. So we really work with you on an intimate basis to understand, because there are things that we don't know about your brand that we need to know in order to work with you. And there are things that we know about what's working for other people that you guys, that brands don't know too, right? So like, it's very much a collaboration that we work with you on in order to figure out what's going to keep, what people care about, what's going to keep them on. And I think all in all, getting them to make sure that you maximize your LTV as much as possible makes that difference in terms of a successful brand versus a non-successful one. So that's on our front. Yeah.
Thank you. And I guess if people want to find out more about you, Rohan, just LinkedIn is probably the best place to go.
Go to our website. We're very responsive there too. When it comes to scheduling demos and things like that, we're happy to show you, even if it's not a priority for now. It's good to know for the future too. So, we're always happy to help.
Yeah, perfect. And Nick, let's come to you next.
Sure. Yeah, I think the future is just really orienting around the customer, getting really closer to the customer, finding ways to create a program that matches their preferences, the way that they use products. And what I mean by that, I think historically people would really optimize towards what was best for the merchant, maybe in prioritizing that, making it like tricky to cancel, think about things like that. I think the future of subs will really bias towards making it really easy for the subscriber to manage their subscription, whether directly through email or through SMS. I think people maybe historically have like over-invested into really fancy custom portals where the subscriber actually doesn't care much about the portal experience. I don't think anyone is like sitting back in their favorite armchair, like spending a bunch of time in someone's portal. Typically, they're managing their subscription when they're on their go, and they've forgotten that they have a box of food showing up at their house next week when they're heading out on vacation, and they just want to be able to manage it really quickly on their phone. So being able to do that and optimize for that experience will ultimately earn the merchant a longer and more fruitful relationship with their customers. So that's where I think subscriptions are headed. On the Skio side, that's certainly where we're moving. And if you want to learn more about Skio, skio.com.
Very good, Nick. Thank you. Harry, over to you. Future of subs.
I think it is generally going to be about using your data to predict relevant subscriptions and how everything should be set up from order number one. I think a lot of the time there's a bit of a gap where people think about their replenishment side of their business, and then they think we just have this kind of subscription side on top of that as well. And I think obviously joining those two things together in one seamless journey that moves someone from that first purchase all the way through to 2, 3, 4, and then bumping them onto a really relevant subscription where they're actually have a great home for 5, 10, 15 orders. I think that's really where you'll see the best subscription brands pulling away. And yeah, in terms of how we can help at Relo, just drop me a message. I'm on harry@reloapp.co, or obviously pop onto our website and book something in there. If you're not a great fit for Relo for whatever reason right now, we do also offer a tech stack consultation service where anyone who just wants to have a chat with us about wider e-commerce strategy, we can give our impartial advice and then connect brands with any partners or people that we might know who could be particularly helpful for them.
Thank you. Anton, no pressure, but finishes off on a high, my friend. What's the future of subs?
I think overall it's just the ability to integrate as much as possible into the subscription service itself. So I think there's it's getting there, but I feel like at least on the loyalty front, right, I've seen that be a super underutilized area just across different loyalty programs that exist out there. People don't really seem to pay that much attention when it comes to subscription loyalty, or at least not as much as they should do. So I think overall it's just the subscription scene continuing to mature and there being as much available right across subscriptions when it comes to bolstering that side of the business as there is right now with just general e-commerce and the one-time payments that's possible. So I think ultimately it's the integrations, and it's becoming a much more mature scene.
Thank you. And last plug for BubbleHouse.
Yeah, BubbleHouse.com for anything loyalty related.
Gents, I massively appreciate your time today. That was an awesome nearly 50 minutes of value for those listening. For those that have tuned in live, thank you. For those that are watching it back, I hope you've enjoyed it. I really encourage you to reach out to these gents. If you want to push your subscription program to the next level, certainly explore Skio, BubbleHouse, and Relo. For now, thank you. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Ecom Engine. But for now, goodbye and have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.